Here we go. It is Thursday, January 23rd. We have a ton of football to cover today. We preview the NFC Championship between the Commanders and the Eagles. We talk about the Jets officially hiring Aaron Glenn and what that means. This is the Early Game Podcast. Listen to the show in the mornings on your commute, whenever and wherever, so you can be a part of today's sports conversations. Let's go. Okay, let's jump right into this preview of the NFC Championship game. It is that time of year. We have reached the penultimate episode of the NFL season. And so the Commanders and the Eagles, it's the 6 seed against the 2 seed. They're going to kick off 3 o'clock on Sunday. Look, the best player in this game is Saquon Barkley. And the Eagles are going to surely lean heavily on him. He's having an insane playoff debut so far this postseason. Last week he had 205 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Rams. The week before he ran for 119 yards. And so he is performing fantastically, and therefore this is a mismatch for the Commanders. This game is a mismatch for the Commanders. They ranked third to last in rushing yards allowed by their defense. So Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. are going to have to figure something out. They're going to have to cook up something to prevent the Eagles from running all over them. And remember, Jalen Hurts ran for 70 yards last week. So the run threat comes from all over. And they're going to have to figure something out to contain these two. The first time these two teams met in November, Saquon ran for 146 yards and 2 touchdowns. And the second game was pretty much exactly the same. 150 yards, 2 touchdowns. So overall, he had 296 yards, 4 touchdowns in 2 games against the Commanders. And this is going to be a massive issue for the Commies. It was something they were unable to contain. Now, they were able to win last week, even with Jahmyr Gibbs, and they did a solid job containing him. Now, the Lions did, for some reason, not run the ball as much in the second half. One of the reasons that might be is because the Commanders have actually been able to prevent the run much better in the second half of games than they have in the first. So they are clearly able to make some sort of adjustment. Maybe the Lions tried being one step ahead here, and they stopped giving him carries in the second half. But he only had 105 yards, Jahmyr Gibbs, last week against the Commanders. But will they be able to withstand Saquon and his impact on this game? Again, these two teams split this season. The Eagles won their first meeting, and the Commanders won their more recent one. So the question becomes, do the Commanders have enough in the tank to continue the run against the Eagles? A better defense than they've seen, and a better offense than they've seen, frankly. So what do they need to do? What do the Commanders need to do? It will be very hard for them to stop the Eagles' offense. Not that Jalen Hurts is overpowering per se, but with all the weapons he has, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon, they're going to have to figure out a way to get stops. And on top of that, Jaden Daniels is going to have to outperform Jalen Hurts. And again, the Eagles have a great defense. It's not going to be easy for Jaden Daniels this week. Not that it was easy last week against the Lions, but watching that game, the Lions clearly had a bad game. I'm not so sure they'll get that with the Eagles who have played every week, have played in every round of the playoffs. I'm not so sure that it will be as easy to score at will like the Commanders were able to last week. In terms of Jaden Daniels, everyone is talking about how mature he is. This is a prove-it game. No rookie quarterback has ever gone to the Super Bowl. If they want to win, and he wants to cement himself as one of the best rookies ever, he is going to have to win this game. He needs to not just lead the offense, but he needs to get his whole team, defense included, in the right mindset for Sunday. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I chose the Commanders over the Lions last week, and I was right. I don't know why, but for some reason, I do think Dan Quinn will be able to cook something up this week. This game, I think, is going to be a lot closer than people think. I do think the offense will be able to keep up with the offense of the Eagles. The question again becomes, do they have a game plan to contain Saquon, to contain A.J. Brown, to contain Devontae Smith, and contain an offense that, frankly, has been rolling the last couple weeks and the whole season? Official picks come tomorrow. For some reason, again, my gut is telling me Commanders. Again, I will let you know what the official pick is tomorrow. I went 1-3 last week. I don't think I brought it up on Monday's show. The one was the Commanders. I think my Bills pick last week, by the way, just as a side note, my pick of Ravens over Bills was because I was trying to make myself feel better. I'll probably take the Chiefs again. We'll do that preview tomorrow. Okay, let's move on. So, we had a lot of coaching GM news yesterday, and it all hit around the same time in the afternoon. But let's just go one by one. Okay, so first, the Patriots are bringing Josh McDaniels back. He will be their offensive coordinator. This is the third separate time he is being hired as the Patriots offensive coordinator. He spent 13 seasons in New England in that role. And all of those were under Bill Belichick. He's been a head coach twice, once with the Broncos, once with the Raiders. Both ended embarrassingly bad. And look, he is never going to be a head coach again. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. But this is the right move for the Patriots. Obviously, Robert Kraft is still trying to figure out life post-Brady, post-Bill Belichick, and this gives him familiarity. I know he trusts Mike Vrabel, and I'm sure Mike Vrabel is going to do a great job. But I think this works out nicely for Robert Kraft, that there's someone in the building who he's comfortable with. He's had so much consistency for so many years. And now he fired Gerard Mayo after one season. I think that he is in desperate need and desperate want for some consistency. It is just hilarious, though, how many times McDaniels has been their offensive coordinator. Okay, let's move on. There's going to be a lot of talk today about dysfunctional teams and owners on the show. Let's begin with that segment by talking about the Las Vegas Raiders. Yesterday, they hired John Spytek to be their next GM. Spytek moves from Tampa Bay to lead the Raiders. What's so noteworthy about this? He was part of the front office when Tom Brady played there. This is Tom Brady's choice. And frankly, this is Tom Brady's team, as we've been talking about. And now we have a little more clarity regarding Brady's role in Las Vegas. He runs the team. Let's get that straight. He chose this guy from Tampa Bay to be his little minion. They're going to make a DreamWorks movie where Tom Brady is the big guy voiced by Steve Carell, and all these guys are bah, 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 bah. The second thing I mentioned the other day is that he is unqualified to run a team. He was unable to get his head coach, his ideal head coach. That was Ben Johnson. He couldn't bring him in. He is in over his head. He was in over his head with the broadcasting stuff. I'm curious to know what kind of ratings that Brady's really bringing to Fox. They desperately needed him. Greg Olsen is better than Tom Brady at broadcasting, and most GMs in football are better than Tom Brady at running a team. I don't have any faith he's going to be anything special or be able to properly run a NFL franchise. He has zero experience. He's won a lot. Don't get me wrong. But this move, bringing in a former member of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, this move clearly shows he's running the ship. The decisions are his. So why don't you just name him team president? Let everyone know. And call it a day. And again, I just don't understand how he's going to be broadcasting football games next season while he clearly has such a prominent position with the Raiders. This year I think he only had the ownership partway through the season. Okay. Let's move on to another dysfunctional football situation. The Jacksonville Jaguars have announced they are parting ways with GM Trent Baalke. Now, this comes after owner Shahid Khan initially said their plan was to keep Baalke on board. If you remember, about a week after they announced that, or a couple of days, in a Zoom call with reporters, he said Baalke's job could be at risk if a head coach candidate wants him gone. Are you serious? Trent, Mr. Baalke, sir, listen to me for a second. This is good news. Get out of there. Good riddance. Is there any way you could take Trevor Lawrence with you? I would love nothing more than for Trevor Lawrence to be part of a functional organization, one that could keep stability around him. I have a very bad feeling Trevor Lawrence is going to be spending his career with this circus of an organization, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he's not going to amount to anything more than first-round playoff exits. But Trent Baalke, go find yourself an owner that actually knows what they're doing, that actually isn't an idiot. It's really crazy to me that happened. The Zoom call was so uncomfortable to watch. And so, the big news yesterday, out of another dysfunctional organization, was that the New York Jets were hiring Aaron Glenn to be their next head coach. After everything we spoke about yesterday, Aaron Glenn agreed to a deal to become the Jets head coach. Ian Rappaport tweeted the deal for the Jets and Aaron Glenn was done yesterday. The new coach just wanted to take some time and consider every facet of this, and now he has the deal, is done in New York. So reportedly he had agreed to the deal yesterday, but had to figure out some specific details, whatever that means. Look, don't get me wrong. I think this is a good hire. He got drafted by and played for the Jets. He knows what this organization is about. He knows what the city's about. The Lions defense obviously had a great year this year. And another positive is he comes in after learning how to be a leader from Dan Campbell. Here's the part that bothered me. It was also reported yesterday that both Glenn and Lance Newmark were interviewing in the Jets facility, but only Aaron Glenn got hired. After this news broke, Tom Pelissero tweeted, with the Jets finalizing their expected deal with Aaron Glenn to be their head coach, the team now plans to proceed to additional second interviews for their GM job, per sources. Lance Newmark was in the building yesterday with Glenn, and others remain under consideration. I mean, this team is such a joke. This is going to be same old Jets, isn't it? I went on a whole rant yesterday about how the Jets cannot hire their coach before they hire their GM. I was told, well, they brought in Newmark at the same time. They're going to hire them at the same time. I was skeptical. I said it seemed pretty odd. And now you're going to tell me other candidates are in the mix? The Jets' dysfunction continues. I will repeat, I said this yesterday. It may accidentally work out for them. I like Lance Newmark. I think you actually have to hire Lance Newmark. If you hire Lance Newmark, you sleptwalked your way into actually making two good hires. Lance Newmark has experience turning teams around. So does Aaron Glenn. They're both very well respected. They're thought very, very highly of. But the fact they hired Aaron Glenn before hiring a GM irritates me to no end. What GM doesn't want to build out a team underneath them? As a GM, you have certain philosophies when it comes to players, when it comes to coaches, when it comes to team building. You need your coaches, and more specifically, your head coach, to match your style. You need to choose the guy who is right for you. Now, whoever takes this job has to work with what he's got. I just don't understand it. On one hand, I don't understand why GMs are so interested in jobs like these. If I'm Lance Newmark, I'm taking my name out of it. Taking my name out of consideration. I get it. There's only 30 of these jobs. I get that. You're lucky to have it. And so, if you get an opportunity in a dysfunctional situation, you'll take it. I cannot believe that Lance Newmark didn't do enough, and it wasn't obvious enough that they should hire him. That they had the continuity beforehand, Aaron Glenn and Lance Newmark, and that he's just the right guy for the job. And now from Lance Newmark, I'm saying, why didn't they want me? Why didn't they make me the offer? Why are they now leaking that other candidates are still under consideration? Man, this would irritate me to no end. And by the way, one funny thing I was thinking about as this story was unfolding, as this news came out, man, poor Rex Ryan. The guy put himself out there. He badly wanted to be the head coach again of the Jets, and he was publicly pitching himself to be the next head coach. And by the way, I thought it could have made sense. Aaron Glenn actually shares a couple of the attributes that I liked about Rex Ryan. The experience in New York, defensive guy, has had interactions with Willie Johnson before, knows the family. But now, I mean, it's a horrible look for Rex Ryan. He's got to go back on TV, talk about the Jets, and talk about a job he was on his hands and knees begging for, and he couldn't get. I like Rex. I think he's fun on TV. That's just a bad look and very embarrassing for him. Okay, let's move on. This is going to be a hybrid topic here. NHL and NFL news. Story. Yesterday, Joe Mixon had a gripe with the NFL. So he got fined. And according to Pro Football Talk, this is straight from their article, the league had fined Texans running back Joe Mixon for saying this after the Kansas City win. Why play the game if every 50-50 call goes with Chiefs? These officials are trash and biased. The issue was Mixon never said that. The quote was from a tweet including an SI.com story regarding Mixon's actual comments after the game. So somebody else said something that Mixon got fined for. The comments were actually made by Bengals player TJ Houshmandzadeh, but not by Joe Mixon. Sports Illustrated published an article about what Joe Mixon said after the Texans-Chiefs game last week, and in that article, they included Houshmandzadeh's comment, and then the league, obviously not knowing how to read properly, fined Joe Mixon. Really hilarious. So, what does this comment have to do with hockey? Joe Mixon's response was, he tweeted, "I'm getting fined by the NFL for what someone else said. What's next? I get fined by them for Connor McDavid cross-checking an opponent on an NHL game?" First of all, Joe Mixon just became one of my favorite players in the NFL. He clearly was trying to flex his hockey knowledge. The boy knows ice. And we spoke about that cross-check yesterday. But he's right. If the NFL is going to make fines and fine players for things they said, do your due diligence. Make sure you are finding the right player. I think that's the least you could ask for if you're going to fine somebody for comments they made. Really ridiculous. A billion-dollar organization can't get it right when they want to punish the player who brings their value up. Can't read the article. Crazy. All right, let's move on. Jimmy Butler was suspended. 2 games. He missed practice. Frankly, that's all you need to know. You know one thing I learned over these last couple weeks making this show? Nobody cares about the NBA. That is one thing I know. I can track what topics do well and which ones don't. And honestly, nobody cares about the NBA. It's astonishing. I get better engagement on this show with hockey than I do with basketball. There's more people want to see my NHL coverage, Ovi Watch. I know there's a lot of Ovi Watch fans out there. But it's kind of crazy. Nobody cares about the NBA. I love basketball, but this sport is so lost. And I do not know what the answer is. All we've spoken about on this show is Jimmy Butler, the Jimmy Butler saga, which nobody really cares about, and the Joel Embiid stories and narratives, which nobody really cares about. It is mind-blowing to me. Really, I was really shocked. Okay. Let's close out the show with very minor baseball news. So, Paul Sewald signed with the Cleveland Guardians. Not much happened yesterday besides this. And this is such a Guardians move. Bring in on a 1-year deal. Fortify the bullpen a little bit. Kind of the way baseball works now is find a guy that maybe you could resurrect a little bit and get value out of them, squeeze a little value out of them, and sign them for less than what other relievers are making. Remember, Tanner Scott just got a 5-year deal with the Dodgers. So this deal, not that Paul Sewald is anywhere near Tanner Scott, but they're probably looking at that and saying, this is how front offices think about it. They're looking at Paul Sewald. They're saying, well, we're going to pay him this amount, and we can get X. We're paying him X amount, and we can get Y amount of WAR out of him. And then they'll say, Tanner Scott is getting paid X amount, and he's going to get Y amount of WAR out of him. And they're probably going to say that ultimately the WAR that they could get out of Paul Sewald, the performance they can get out of Paul Sewald relative to the amount of money he's going to make, is they'll justify and say it's close to what Tanner Scott is. Now, I don't actually know, but they're going to use some sort of comparison like that. Maybe that's extreme. If I had to guess, Tanner Scott's worth every penny and probably still a better value than what they're paying for Paul Sewald. But I'm just saying that's how teams look at it. And that's how they justify it. Okay. That's a show. Tomorrow we're going to preview the AFC Championship game, make final conference championship picks. We will obviously cover any sports stories that happen in the world of sports today. Make sure you follow on Spotify, like, comment, subscribe on YouTube, and most importantly, have a great day. This is the Early Game Podcast. We'll see you tomorrow.